You know how people talk about older team? We always say this: older teams, the experience and all that is better. Is it the part of being a young team that costs you? Is it that they make mistakes that an older player won't make? Is that the biggest difference, or is it they're like behind a step, or their timing isn't as good, or all of the
Sidney
above?
Crosby was in they put a post about 2 weeks ago how has the most NHL faceoffs in the history of hockey, and
Oh
it's
wow, really
15,000 whatever
cool stat.
faceoffs. It's something like that. I think Mac. I think did you see that one, Mac? Anyways, they
Really, you
posted
didn't
that
see
he's
that
got
one?
the most faceoffs in history. Yeah, it broke the
Just
record for
broke
the
the record.
most face. I think it's 15,000 or 18,000 faceoffs.
Wow.
Yeah. So right.
Mac knows.
So it's a way of answering your question. Is like if you take a face off against Sidney Crosby, he's probably going to win. Even if you've taken 10,000, he's taken 5,000 more at the NHL level. So experience does make a huge difference. So when a defenseman's going in the OHL, let's say, and you're 17 or 16 as opposed to 21, or 20, a 20-year-old has probably been beaten down in his head when he's going to retrieve pucks or going to battles. You can finish your hit, yeah, but don't have your stick up in the air, because if you hit the guy that can knock the puck out, and you haven't done anything with the puck, right? You eliminated only one threat. So a 21-year-old or a 20-year-old is going to go in there and knock a puck away and take the body. I'm using that as one
Yeah,
example,
it's those little
right?
details.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's maybe picking your spots, when to pinch, picking your spots, when to understand the game, when to dump it in, how to manage it, and stuff like that. And then just the age. I mean, if you give me, if we're going to play a game and we play, and you give me 20 19-year-olds and you get the 17-year-olds, the 19-year-olds should win. Like, this is just the bottom line. So yeah, it's experience. It's experience. It's strength. It's you get better. What you will blow your mind, and you guys have coached. Sorry, we got a little bit of a crowd here. Some of our coaches from
Our
Bio
biggest
still are
fans
here.
are here watching.
But when you coach, I remember watching. Well, when I coached, you'd see, like, when I remember coaching. Let's say it was when I was coaching in Bell Tire. We were that first year we were U14, and we saw the U15s on before or after us, and you
U15
just go,
belt like your older teams,
yeah,
Beltire.
and you just go, geez, these kids are big. It's only 1 year. I remember watching my son grow up, and when they were in Pee Wee going into Bantam, you go, God, the kids a year older are so much bigger. And then the next year, your kids are the exact same. And I remember in my son's draft year how I was looking at the kids that were 6 feet tall that in minor midget. It's like, it seems like it's impossible, right? Seems impossible.
Man,
But then a year comes and your kid is 6'1",
I have a vivid memory
and you look huge. Yeah.
that of going to one of their Windsor AAA games when they were like 13. I vividly remember this. We were here, and it was on the other side there where they come out after the games, and little Chooch comes out with his dress shoes, and I remember vividly noticing. I'm like, man, he's getting tall. Like, wow, he's getting tall. And now he's like 6'2". He's like taller than me, and it was like boom overnight. Like, you can see how fast it goes from like 14 to 15 to 16 to 17. It's like, holy, like, what is going on? You see it with some of these kids too, right?
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's
and
pretty
then
wild.
and then so my point to that is, every year, like, as junior and pro level, like 1 year, you wouldn't think it makes that much of a difference, with that 1 year of experience. A kid coming back from a pro camp. So that's another thing. So you got a kid that plays junior, kid that plays junior for 2 years, kid that plays junior for 2 or 3 years that has been to a pro camp or two. You can't even explain the experience that a kid like that gets.
So
It's crazy.
one of the I think interesting thing to notice is the physical growth. Like, let's say you hit 18-ish, most men are not growing a ton more past 18, 19, 20-ish, right? But the mental development and like the skill set development keeps going. So like the gap physically might not be as wide between like 16 to 17, 17 to 18, 18 to 19, because everyone's kind of
As
hitting
far as
their,
growth,
as far as just physical, their height, their weight a little bit, but like you're not going from, when you're a teenager, you might put on like 20 pounds over a few months in the summertime, whereas from 19 to 20, you're probably not going to do that, right? So typically you're kind of plateauing in physical growth around that 19-ish, but how you play will still continue. Like, what do you call somebody's prime in the NHL? Like 24, 25,
I think
26,
I think they
27?
said it's 24, 25, or maybe or exactly what you said,
Eh,
24, 25, or 26,
yeah,
or 27.
27, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, one
so
of
think
those
about,
five.
but so if you take a
Maybe
19-year-old in the OHL or CHL or whatever, physically they're probably pretty similar when they're 24 in terms of height, weight, like
yeah, they're not going to get taller
right.
necessarily.
Not
If they
necessarily going
do,
to put
it's
on a
like
ton
not
more
much.
weight or
Yeah,
anything.
but the obviously the strength is different.
Strength is different, but even well, maybe not even like because my strength difference between 20 and 24 was not that different. Like what I was
Where you
doing in the
working,
gym,
where you're working out like real workout, like hockey.
yeah, like if I just go off raw numbers lifting in the gym
Okay,
when I was
but
19,
there don't you agree? There's something different between lifting and being a human.
I yes. My point is you're distracting my point. My point is physically it's not as easy to see the development from let's say 18 to 24, okay? As it is from 10 to 16, obviously. Yes? Growth from 10 to
Yeah,
16,
yeah, yeah,
very
yeah, yeah. Well,
obvious.
yeah, 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 yeah.
16 to 20 or whatever, 24 is not as obvious, right? Because it's kind of in the mix. But your actual skill set and mental development is a lot, right? It changes a lot from 16 to 24. So when you're watching kids on the ice, it's not as clear. A rookie in the OHL that is 16, their mental game or their skill set development from 16 to 17, 17 to 18, 18 to 19, 19 to 20 is still huge. Whereas their physical growth isn't quite as large. So it's like it's not as obvious how much better they're getting year over year because the physical element isn't there to see.
I see what you
Do
mean.
you
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying? So same thing from you get a guy that goes to their first pro camp when they're 19, 20, whatever. They enter their professional league as a 20-year-old. The difference between them as a player 20 to 24 is night and day probably for most guys, you know? That's kind of like part of the college, like the NCAA argument. It's like you have this runway to get to that prime years or those prime years of 24 where that physical development is still there in the gym and you're maturing, right? You're still maturing, but how you play the game is much different from 20 to 24, even though you might look like the same kind of person physically, right? Like the eye test isn't quite as different, but from a skill set standpoint, a mental development standpoint, maturity, judgment on how to do things, that's where I think the big improvements happen. And maybe because it's not so obvious to see because of it's not physical growth necessarily. It's not as clear that that's actually what's happening. So when you talk about the difference between having a young team in the OHL and an older team in the OHL, I think a lot of times it can come down to those things that you don't see as clearly, right? Like so, like Charlie's a good example. Like when he's first year in the OHL, like his size he might be what is he maybe 10 pounds different, right? He was almost the same
Yeah.
height, almost the same weight
10, 15 pounds different.
because he started one
Half an inch. He's
yeah, right?
6'2" now. He was 6'1" ish.
So he's like not a ton different physically, right? But his maturity level is a lot different, and how he can judge plays is a lot different. So I think that's kind of
The difference though is that little you don't even that baby face going in at 16. Now it's
yeah
it's not like he grows a full beard either, but like he can get the chinny chins
yeah
in a week, like in a week.
the
And it's I love it. Like he goes, "Hey Dad, what do you think? I should I shave?" And I go, "No, like honestly, I'm telling you the truth because of the way you play. Keep the chinny chins going because it looks like you're scarier, right?" Yeah. So it was funny. I saw a picture of Arbor Jack guy the other day, his first year in the OHL, and it's like, ha! You, dude, you'd look and you go, oh, this little boy, he's not, it's gonna be the toughest guy in the league.
I gotta pull it up.
Yeah.
What is it? It's his first year of the OHL.
Yeah. I just go pick up a pick.
How do you spell? By the way, how do you spell this name?
It doesn't matter. Just put
Yeah.
Arbor is spelled many different ways. But if you look at his youth pics, it's like he's a little skinny kid, tall skinny kid. He doesn't look like a killer.
Oh yeah.
See what I mean?
Oh wow.
But that's what happens is growth. So, but
holy,
yeah,
that's wild.
yeah. Does he look like he's gonna be fighting in the NHL and killing people? No. But I've got a quote, but I'm gonna bastardize it. But it sums up why about experience. Okay, if you ask someone, how did you become successful? Just experience. Well, how'd you get experience? Lots of mistakes. Maybe I did it backwards. But basically, you don't become successful without making a lot of mistakes, right? So if you take a hockey player, like how do you become a good hockey player? It's like you don't you don't get experience and you don't become successful by just being good all the time. You make mistakes, right? You learn. That's what I'm saying about a first year player as opposed to a fourth year player is when you get that soft rim on the wall, the first 30 games of your career, see adults, the first 30 games of your career, that rim with a D pinching down and a winger coming down to hammer you is comes in fast motion, and it's not the same as doing it in midget and bantam, right? And then you do it for 30 games, 40 games, and you do it in practice. All of a sudden, it slows down, and you learn how to actually even put your hands out, how to protect yourself, how to read the game a little bit. And then all of a sudden, you've done that for 1 year, 2 years, and the next thing you know, that's you can take any rim off the wall. You don't care anymore because it's easy, right? And that's the experience you're talking about. It's not about stick handling through people. It's not about being able to pick corners on shooting. It's the little things in the game that give you experience. Hinging the right way if you're a D, how to support pucks, how to track properly.